Hey everybody, this is John for Pioneer Nexus MTG coming at you with another deck overview, this time with a bit of a tricky deck to explain, that being Jeskai Ascendancy combo in the Pioneer format. If you like these informative deck overviews, please consider subscribing to the channel, giving us a thumbs up, leaving a constructive comment down below. So this one's a little bit more difficult to understand because this is a deck that is different. It revolves around the card Jeskai Ascendancy, which whenever you cast a non-creature spell, creatures you control get +1/+1 till end of turn. Untap those creatures. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. This deck has a whole bunch of stuff going on. Card has a whole bunch of stuff going on with it. But essentially, what it does is whatever creatures you have in play, untap every time you cast a spell. You then try to cast very cheap spells and cycle through your deck as much as possible. Now there are a couple different variants of this deck. We'll take a look at this one, we'll take a look at the Sylvan Caryatid one, and another one that is similar to this one, but a little bit different. What you're trying to do is get Saheeli Sublime Artificer in play, or some other creature. Sublime Artificer, every time you're casting a spell, you get access to a 1/1 token. If you cast enough cheap spells, you get a bunch of 1/1 tokens, and then if you can find some way to give them haste, you can kill them quite quickly. To that end, you have things like Bitter Reunion, which is 1 in a red. Never enters the battlefield. You may discard a card. If you do, draw 2 cards. Okay, works quite well with what's going on. Sacrifice Bitter Reunion. Creatures you control gain haste until end of turn. Okay, so we kind of established how you win. You get a bunch of tokens into play, kill your opponent out of nowhere. So how do you accomplish this? Well, normally in the Caryatid version, you would get a bunch of mana from untapping your Caryatid and continuously cast spells. What this one is primarily trying to do is cast Retraction Helix on one of your other creatures in play. Doesn't really matter which one. And then you cast a 0-mana artifact, either Mox Amber or Tormod's Crypt. And then each iteration, you're basically untapping all your creatures, and then you get to Retraction Helix the permanent back to your hand. So if you get a situation where you have Jeskai Ascendancy in play, a creature, and one of these 0-mana artifacts with a Retraction Helix, you can basically go infinite casting spells. You can filter through your deck as much as you can. Eventually you'll find a Saheeli or some other way to create creatures, and then find a Bitter Reunion, kill your opponent. Sounds like a whole bunch of moving parts, and it really is. To that end, you have things like Consider. You have things like Mishra's Research Desk. Exile the top 2 cards of your library. Choose one of them. You may play it until the end of turn. A new edition from Brothers War. Then you have access to Falahala, whatever, Archaeologist. Never enters the battlefield. Mill 3. You can put a non-creature, non-land spell from among them milled this way into your hand. Allows you to find all your missing combo pieces if they happen to be in the top 3. Otherwise, it comes down as a 1/4, which isn't necessarily terrible. And obviously, you have access to Emery to mill over a bunch of stuff. Can mill over a Portable Hole, Tormod's Crypts, Mox Ambers, or Research Desks, allowing you to get access that way, while also allowing you to potentially find your combo piece of Mox Amber or Tormod's Crypt. Then obviously, as you're doing this chain with Saheeli, you're getting a bunch of 1/1s, and then you Bitter Reunion, kill them out of pretty much nowhere. Obviously, key to all making this happen is Jeskai Ascendancy, and then, since you're already kind of filling up your graveyard arbitrarily, dig through time to help you find your missing pieces. Portable Hole to buy you a little bit of time, deal with your opponent's hate cards, like something like Damping Sphere. And then, sideboard, you kind of get to juke a little bit. Third Path Iconoclast, basically additional copies of Saheeli, allowing you to put tokens into play. Good place to be. Radiant Flames, controllable sweeper, pretty good against the aggressive decks when you need to buy a little bit of time. As much like Lotus Field, you do take a little bit of time to set up. Redain helps protect your combo, helps slow down the go over the top decks, as nothing in your deck costs more than 3 anyway. Pithing Needle, good way to shut down things like Karn. Rending Volley, good for angels, spirits, etc. And then Silence, very good against counterspell decks, as counterspells, obviously on your Ascendancy or Saheeli, could buy your opponent a lot of time. So this deck is the same thing, except the win-con situation is different. You're not relying on Retraction Helix or anything like that. Instead, you're using either something like Sylvan Caryatid, Llanowar Loam Speaker, turning your lands into 3/3 elementals, or Sylvan Awakening. To end of turn, all your lands become 2/2 elemental creatures with reach, indestructible, and haste. They're still lands. Basically what happens, you play Ascendancy, you play Sylvan Awakening, all of your lands become creatures. Every time you're casting spells, you're doing this loop-de-loop, your lands are getting arbitrarily large, and then you just smack your opponent with hasting lands. Beyond that, you just play a bunch of different things to you use things like Crash Through, that way you can trample over if your opponent has a bunch of blockers, Witness Protection to slow down your opponent's annoying creatures, Consider and Opt as ways to cycle through your deck and also to trigger Ascendancy once you get this loop going, Idyllic Tutor to find your Ascendancy combo, Showdown of the Skalds as a one-off kind of grindy thing you can get with Idyllic Tutor, then 4 copies of Treasure Clue Ruse. Not a terrible place to be when, once again, you're already looting through your deck. Much like Dig Through Time, it helps you find your missing pieces and keep going whenever you start to run out of different things. Sideboard, obviously a little bit different. Assemble the Legion, interesting one. It's a 1/1 con that you can wish for with Idyllic Tutor, can take over the game on its own if given enough time. Slower Blaze along with Radiant Flames, quite nice sweepers. Monastery Mentor, kind of a sidestep win con, much like Third Path Iconoclast is in the Saheeli version. An offer you can't refuse, both a way to potentially ramp yourself, keep yourself going while also protecting the combo. Pithing Needle, once again, we've already talked about. Karn's a major pain in the butt for these kind of combo-ish decks. And then Portable Hole as a way to remove problematic permanents costing 2 or less from your opponent. Things like Pithing Needle can slow you down potentially, etc. Actually, can Pithing Needle? No, they can't slow down mana abilities. But they can slow down Llanowar Loam Speaker's ability to turn your lands into 3/3s. So, once again, primarily here for Karn, but there are other things that can shut down that your opponent could have access to. This version, very similar to what we looked at in the first thing, although you don't have the infinite haste token. Instead, this one goes for a little bit more of a little bit more controlled option, with ultimately probably using Ledger Shredder as its primary win con. Once again, you're still using Retraction Helix plus cheap artifacts to try to get an infinitely large creature and kill your opponent as quickly as possible. Once again, Ledger Shredder helps with that, as it also connives. The Archaeologist helps you find your missing pieces while being a body during the combo turns. And then, once again, you're already kind of milling yourself. You're already looting, etc. Nice deck to play Treasure Cruises and Dig Through Times in. Sideboard, seeing a lot of the same things. Reverse Engineer, way to improvise with your cheap artifacts to draw some cards. Deafening Clarion, protect yourself in the early turns and against aggressive decks. Talic Rebuke as a cheap counter spell to play during a key turn. Helps turn your artifacts into something more useful during those turns. Bankbuster, a little bit of a grindy card. Also something you can recur with your Emery. Class Casket, exiles creatures 3 mana or less. Once again, buys you some time against the aggressive decks. And then Pithing Needle, primarily here for Karn, can shut down other problematic permanents. So overall, this deck in some ways is similar to Lotus Field Combo. It's trying to attack the meta in a way that's slightly unexpected. It's a little bit more moving pieces to the deck than even Lotus Field has, and just the win cons overall are a little bit more convoluted than Cast Approach of the Second Sun, Cast Approach of the Second Sun win the game, or Niv Visit, Valakut Exploration, the various different things that deck uses, or Thassa's Oracle. Obviously Oracle is banned in the format, so actually no, Oracle is not banned. Inverter is banned. But there's something to note. You do have this like infinite loop with Retraction Helix to kind of win the game with an infinitely large 0 thing, or you can play the older version of Sylvan Awakening plus Jeskai's Ascendancy, tapping all your lands, killing your opponent that way. Both versions have their pluses and minuses. Neither deck sees a lot of play, so as far as the matchups, couldn't begin to tell you. You figure with a non-artifact version of the deck, or like Sylvan Caryatid version of the deck, probably the earliest you can go off is turn 3. Most likely turn 4 is you probably have to cast Ascendancy and untap with it. Obviously things like Mox Amber or Sylvan Caryatid can get you a little bit ahead on mana, but don't know if that's often enough to get you started. Like, I think you would need Ascendancy, 0-man Artifact, and either Retraction Helix, so you could potentially go, I guess, Ascendancy on 3, play Mox Amber, untap your Emery, and then kind of combo from there with Retraction Helix. So I guess you have turn 3 potential nut draws, but that really requires a lot of moving pieces. So I would suspect this deck is probably a more turn 4, turn 5 combo, which is very similar to what Lotus Field combo is. Now, obviously, this deck is vulnerable to different hate. That deck is more vulnerable to just, you know, things like Damping Sphere, Alpine Moon, you know, different things like that. This version, obviously, a little bit more vulnerable to things like Boseiju, Odawaru, you know, type of artifact or enchantment hate, etc., etc. That said, deck can combo off at instant speed if it has Retraction Helix in play and can go through the iterations. I guess it can't cast the Ambers and Tormod's Crypts during that, so never mind on that. But it is a deck that can go off from a low base if it does have Retraction Helix and a 0-mana artifact, and obviously a creature to put it on, and then Saheeli putting an army in a can, you know. So I'm not sure which version is best. I have very little experience playing with or against the deck overall. I don't think I've even played it in the modern format when it's been legal there for quite some time, but it has similar, very convoluted ways to win the game. But don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and hope to see you for the next video.